What's going on, team? Now in this video, we're going to be covering a really interesting topic that I like to call mastering the human game. And in this module, it's really going to be about the big picture, bird's eye overview perspective on the dynamics of the human game that we're actually playing in as humans here on planet Earth, right? Because if we don't understand the context and if we don't have a deep understanding of really like the rules and the deeper philosophy of how our reality works and how our human game works, then we're not really going to know what to optimize for in life. Because I think that, all of you have joined this program for one reason or another. And you would have joined for like a variety of reasons. But when you look at the deepest aspects of why you joined, well, you're typically trying to get out or improve your current situation to achieve a future reality that you desire at a very deep level, driven by your deepest innate emotions, right? So what I like to do, and before getting into the tactics and the strategies in the rest of this program, I really just wanted to go over the bigger picture perspective of the human game, the rules and really the laws in which our game is governed by. And when we start to understand that, we can really just start to look at what are the specific components and what are the variables that we need to optimize for to achieve whatever success looks like in our own personal life. So in this video, it's pretty detailed, so I do want to say that. And when you're going through this, I just want to say that if any of this information is overwhelming at any point, don't stress about it, because this is a pretty high level perspective. And all I want to say is don't stress if that's you. You can always come back to this video, and this is probably a video I'm going to continue to refine over time as well. So I'm honestly welcoming your feedback on this one too, but I just wanted to let you know to keep that in mind and to not stress. So now we're going to jump into a keynote, and then we're going to get into some mind maps to really visually present this concept and the bigger picture bird's eye view of what's going on in our reality at this point in time. So let's jump into it. All right. So the overview for this video, as I've already really stated, what I'm about to share with you in this module can possibly go against the grain of everything that you've ever learned since childhood, and most likely everything that you've actually believed to be true your entire life. And as you're listening to me share what I'm about to share with you, honestly, you may get a little bit overwhelmed, disoriented, skeptical, and this can even bring up a bit of anger towards me at times. And I just wanted to let you know that that's to be expected. And if you feel those things throughout this module, completely fine. Because at the end of the day, you can't master the game of life without a massive radical shift in your perspective and your perceptions about yourself, other people, the world, and the strategies that you actually are implementing on a daily basis. And I was really uncertain of whether or not to share what I'm about to share with you in this specific module at this depth and at this level. But after reflecting, you really can't make massive improvements in your life without pushing your mind beyond your comfort zone. And I think that everyone here is honestly absolutely ready for just what I'm about to share. And it is a little bit left of field, which is why I just wanted to really preface what I have so far in this video to just make sure you're really just allowing the information to flow and not being too rigid in either analyzing it at a very deep logical level, because it can be pretty extreme. So I just wanted to also mention that no matter how much resistance you feel within yourself with what I'm about to share, there will be an aspect of your intuition, your intuitive knowing, that's going to provide you with a deep inner knowing of all the information that we're about to cover. And this inner knowing is stuff that you honestly deeply already know within you, because the truth is that I'm not actually going to be sharing anything new with you per se. I'm simply just helping you remember what you already know deep within yourself. And throughout this training, if you actually do find yourself demanding proof that what I'm sharing is true, then just know that if you actually follow all the action steps that I present to you at the end of this video, then the truthfulness of what I share with you today will actually be validated by what you experience in your own personal life. So this isn't really something that you can continue to analyze and question whether it's true or not. Just go and apply it and then see for yourself. And then additionally, some key points to keep in mind that I really covered in the initiation series, because I do want to obviously be cautious with you coming in and me presenting some different opinions and beliefs and worldviews, I just wanted to state once again that I honestly have no intention to sell you on my ideas, paradigms, or views of the world. I'm merely just here to share what is true for me personally based on my inner knowing, and I do so at the attempt to really just empower you on your own journey, so you can start applying useful tools that work. Now, also, please just ensure that you use your own free will and discern what is true for you. So just accept what resonates at this present time and let go of the rest. Once again, much of what I say may and will trigger you, so just keep an open mind and remain neutral without attaching yourself to like any polarizing particular belief. And then lastly, just really be patient and trust the process, because there will be times where the logical mind is just unequipped, like even my own, to understand what is going on here with this explanation. But I do want to say that this is so far my best attempt to just logically explain the deeper concepts that we're about to get into here for the rest of the video. And lastly, approach this video with just a playful energy where you're avoiding trying to force yourself to logically understand what is really being portrayed, and instead just feel for the truth within and feel what emotions are coming up for you with the information being presented at this point in time. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to be covering the dynamics of the human game itself. We're going to be covering the 4 pillars of performance because, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, everyone's joined this program for a certain reason, right? And to achieve what you want in your life, well, we really need to understand the deeper components of performance, because our ability to get what we want in life is really a derivative of our personal performance to actually optimize and get there to achieve what we do want to achieve in life. And then we're going to go into the deeper philosophical component, and that's really going to be required to set you up so when you are taking action on the practical steps that I give you towards the end of this video, you're going to have the understanding and the right paradigms in place that are going to allow you to achieve results with the action items. Because at the end of the day, our reality essentially reflects what we believe to be true. So without the philosophy, we're just going to be spinning our wheels and we're not going to be getting anywhere. And that's why the philosophy is always the deepest and most essential component when really trying to adopt any new empowering strategy in our life. And then I'm going to go over the specific practical steps that you can implement on a daily basis to achieve what you want. And so now we're going to get into really a deeper explanation of just reflecting on what the human game is. So let's start with a question. I would like you to just sit back and reflect on this one. Like, have you ever actually viewed life itself to be a game? And have you ever viewed yourself as a player playing the Earth game or the human game here on planet Earth? Because before we go further into investigating the human game, I want to just really take a quick look at all the games that we really play here on Earth at this current point in time, because there's a lot of correlation with a lot of this stuff. And all we're doing here in today's video is we're just looking at the biggest game there is, which is the human game on Earth. So just out of interest, ask yourself, like, have you ever looked at all the games that we typically play here on Earth? Games like football, basketball, chess, poker, racing, golf, hockey, whatever. And if so, have you ever looked at the deeper structures, the rules, and the regulations of such games? And if so, have you even gone the next step to then question like the deeper intelligence, the plan, and the intent that's used to create the games in the first place? And the reason I ask you this is because the players themselves of these games actually very rarely question the origins of the very game that they themselves play. And they just simply begin playing games that were invented like a long time ago and do exactly what they're told by the powers that be that have invented the game. And when you look at the bigger picture here, the same is true for the majority of humans playing the human game as well. I mean, how many of us really question the origins of like the way that Earth is structured and set up and all the systems and the dynamics that take place with the way that we conduct and live our lives? And without knowing the deeper structures, how are we to know like what to really optimize for? And when we look at human beings from a very broad perspective, I've typically found that they fit into like one of two archetypes. The first one is that of the spectator, who don't really view themselves as a player, and they therefore spend like the majority of their life in the stands watching other players play the game. And this is more of an unconscious way of living. This is where you're just doing what you're told, following your routine, without really deeply analyzing, well, how does this game even work? And what is it all about? This is really an unconscious state of living where we're just going through the motions and, just really allowing life to take us where it wants us to, essentially. But then there's the second type, which is really the player, who makes up about 5% of the population. And these are the people who are living consciously. They're fully aware of their role within the game that they're currently playing. And the players typically spend the majority of their time really on or focused on the advancement of their own personal mastery and the mastery of their craft in pursuit of their unique purpose in life. Now, there's nothing wrong with entertainment, but when we look at the spectators, the thing that they spend the most of their time doing in life is just really optimizing for dopamine hits and looking for entertainment and total consumption of everything. Food, entertainment, media, it's all there. But the player is actively working on themselves, working on their craft. Now, if you want to get an additional reference to what I'm actually talking about here with the spectator and the players in life and how the generalized understanding of the details of these two archetypes, then I invite you to just go double back around to the initiation series, which is going to be in module 7, called The Game. And that's where I talk about this in further depth. So when we look at game structures and when we look at players and when we look at what is required for a player to succeed, is really at the underlying component of it is that they must not only understand themselves very deeply, understand how they can perform and how they can produce and how they can really create and adapt to the game they're playing at the best and highest standard. They also need to understand the universe in which they're living in and playing within, because they need to understand and master the rules of the game to be really any good at it. And navigating life without an understanding of the rules of the universe is essentially like trying to play chess without knowing the rules of fucking chess. And by doing so, you're just going to be bound to lose. No matter how hard you work or try or grind your face off in the process, if you're just trying to move a bunch of pieces around, in other words, doing a lot of work without understanding the complexity and the dynamics of the rules and the structures, well, you're just going to look like an idiot, right? And I'd like you to just sit with this for a moment and now put this into context of looking at your own life and looking at the world around you, because we're all trying to achieve something, aren't we? That's why you're here in the first place. If you weren't trying to achieve something better, more, or evolve as a human being, well, you wouldn't have actually invested in this program. Period. But oftentimes we get caught up in the rat race of just really trying to optimize for what other people think we should be optimizing for and following peaks or shiny objects that other people deem worthy. And the more that we continue to chase these things, well, we end up just getting lost amongst all the noise. So what we're doing here today and what we're focused on is getting clarity about where are we actually going? What is the end point? What are we trying to optimize for? Because with clarity, we have purpose of direction. And with a deep sense of purpose of direction, well, all of our efforts are going to be focused and aligned towards one singular path or a generalized pathway in which we're conducting ourselves in life, where we can start to look at all the components that make up us as a human being and start to really look at them through the lens of optimizing for this singular or overarching purpose of why we're here on planet Earth and what we're really going to do with our life. And without understanding that, then, any shiny object that comes our way or any event that happens that disrupts us, well, we're just going to be getting pinged around like a ball in a ping pong machine or a pinball machine without being able to make any actual progress. So that's why I really wanted to just focus so much effort and concentration and invite you to really just sit with me here and go deeper on this stuff, because it really is the most important thing that we could discuss. Because without knowing where we're going, you could optimize all the performance within yourself, within your mind, your body, your spirit, as much as you want. But without clarity of where you're actually going to go, without a steering wheel on your car, you're just going to end up like crashing away and hitting the barriers in life. So now, as we move forward, I also want you to understand that, like, at the highest levels of performance, amongst the greatest in the world, the extra edge can always be found in the larger philosophical topics that we're going to be covering here today in this video. Because the greatest in the world always understand that it's the way in which you perceive the world and the way in which you perceive yourself that is really the root of being able to get what you want in your life. And if you want to rise to another level, well, you're going to have to gain a greater perspective, a higher perspective in which you view yourself and the world in which you're playing in. So to quickly cover the 4 pillars of performance, the first one is your design. And that is really going to categorize into the following. It's like the game design. So your environment design, basically. What is the game that you're playing within? What is the intention in which that game was created for? And that then will then allow us and help us to determine our own personal design. So our own personal design will tell us our unique, like, genetic makeup, our DNA, our innate strengths, our weaknesses, and what we're naturally gifted at and built for. And then the further elements of this, it'll start to allow us to get an understanding of our general purpose in life and also our unique purpose. And I'll go into the details of those 2 differentiations in just one moment. And then next we've got our mind. And our mind makes up really the underlying psychology, the operating system in which we live by, our philosophy, so our outlook on life, the way in which we view ourselves, the world, our understanding of the universe. And the next component here is really just the level of intelligence that we have. So our ability to think strategically and our ability to understand ourselves at a very deep level. And the other couple of ones that fit in here are really like our current recurring thoughts and our underlying belief systems that we've adopted since our childhood. The next component of performance is our body, so our physical vehicle. And this also is directly related to things like our brain chemistry, our DNA, our genetic code, and also our chakra and energetic centers. So you'll notice here that I've put DNA and genetic code in our body, but note that design is out there in red because it's separate, because design determines our mind, body, and spirit. But it's not a part of it. It's a creation of it, but it's something that is separated from our internal system, which is our mind, body, spirit complex. So the next one is our spirit, and this is directly related to our connection to the creator and whatever word you use for that, right? So that could be God, it could be source, it could be the divine. It's really the quantum realm, the higher spiritual essence in which everything is being created from. And this is also directly related to our own energetic vibration in life, which is directly correlated to our level of consciousness. And I'm not going to be going into our mind, body, spirit, like our internal system today. The purpose of this video is really to talk about design of both the human game and also you as a human being. And then in other videos, we're going to looking at the other aspects of performance across your mind, body, spirit. But today we're focused on the design element. So now looking at pillar 1, your design. Firstly, we've got the game design. So as I mentioned, this is really about the design of the Earth game and how it integrates within our universe at large. Then we've got your design, which is the intent in which you were designed from, and the source or origin of your creation. You know, that also ties into like, who created you? Which is a very interesting question to ask. It's something that many don't ask themselves. And this also ties in, as I mentioned, to the creation and design of your DNA, your genetic code, your unique traits, gifts, talents, and strengths. Then in going deeper into understanding our general purpose in life, well, to play the human game, our general purpose is to actually play the human game and receive all of the benefits that we all receive from actually playing the human game. And these benefits are really to experience all human emotions and to learn from the experience of overcoming limitation and lack. And I'm going to get further into this concept a little bit later in the video. Then this ultimately leads to tremendous amounts of growth, expansion, fun, enjoyment, challenge, exploration, and triumph, which then allows us to learn more about ourselves and others, advancing our soul's evolution and ultimately returning us to Source, or our Creator. Now, when we start understanding these things, a lot of us can really start to ask the question like, well, what about negative feelings? Like, what about feeling fear and, going through traumatic experiences, and feeling all of these dense emotions that come along with the human game experience? Well, I will get into that a little bit later, but as you'll find in analyzing this generalized concept, we note that we are really at the command of all of it. And there is no right or wrong. It's just a limited 3D or three-dimensional concept that we humans have adopted, the paradigm of right or wrong and good and bad. So then when we typically face emotions that feel dense, we label them as bad. But it's not bad. Everything that we experience in our reality is merely just an opportunity to learn from everything that we experience, which allows us to reclaim our personal power and expand into the infinite version of ourself. But that's something that I'm going to get into in a little bit more detail in a moment. Next, we've got our specific purpose in life. Now, many of you have really joined this program specifically to get more clarity on what that is for you. And I'm here to tell you that as we continue to look at the underlying dynamics of the human game, this is going to start to become a little bit more evident for you as we go through this process. But your specific purpose is really to play out this human game in the unique and precise way that you actually chose to prior to your incarnation. Crazy concept, but just bear with me and let's stick to the end of the video before we actually tie off a lot of these points. So the next concept I want to introduce you to is the two phases of life. So we've covered the two archetypes, right? The spectator and the player. But I'm going to show you here how they fit into the two phases of life in which we live. So phase one, life as a spectator. This is where, upon birth, the game is designed for us to be really completely forget who we are. So when we come in and we're born into this earth reality or earth illusion, earth game, well, our memory's wiped. We go through the veil of forgetfulness and we forget completely who we are. And everything is designed to convince us that you and this three-dimensional playing field is real, where we attach ourselves to the illusion in a very extreme way. And the game is also designed for you to experience limitation and to convince you that you are completely powerless. Now, this design is typically referred to as your programming or conditioning. When you're growing up and you're born, and many of us in, say, the personal development space have really started to understand the concepts that how much of an effect our programming and conditioning has on us early in life. And we think that, we're victims of our programming and our conditioning, but I'm here to introduce you to the concept that you actually designed what you would be programmed and conditioned into prior to your birth. But that is going a little bit stretch for this specific video, but I just want to plant that seed and hold that in your awareness for now. Now, as you do explore this concept deeper, do you really think it's any accident that the human game begins with you being born as a helpless infant with absolutely no power, knowledge, or abundance of any kind, or even any ability? It's funny, human babies are very unique in the way that they have no ability to function or look after themselves in their environment without a parent or someone looking over them to help guide them and nurse them and look after them in their early stages. Whereas the majority of animals, they're born and they get up and start running with the herd and moving with the herd like right away, which is very interesting just to consider for this time being. Now, let's go over and switch to phase 2, that of merging into the player archetype. Now, I wanted to let you know that we all experience both of these archetypes through life. In early phases of life, we're typically the spectator, where we're consuming, we're walking through life unconsciously. But there does reach a point in life where we start to actually become aware of what I'm talking about now, and we essentially start to become conscious and awake. And that's where we start to embody the archetype of the player. Now, after forgetting who we are and immersing yourself in experiences of extreme and severe limitation, restriction in phase 1 of the human game, what actually happens is your higher self begins to nudge you into phase 2, where you're going to start to face different experiences and start to become aware of this reality at a much higher level. Now, this is where you're going to really start to feel incomplete, like you're missing something, like there's something more to life that you've been told to believe, like there's a bigger purpose for you in life. And this is when you're going to begin your journey of searching for answers and a higher purpose in your life. And this is really where you're going to start to begin to vibrate at a higher level and soon find that many things in your current reality no longer resonate with you anymore. Things like your interests, your friendship circles, your belief systems, they're going to evolve and change over time, and even societal norms. And what I've found when people are going through this transition from phase 1 to phase 2, the world and like reality itself can start to like feel fake, right? It doesn't sit right. It seems like there's something off that we haven't been aware of for our entire life. And this can be quite scary as we start to open up to a bigger reality of what's actually going on. So the transition looks like this. When we transition from phase 1 to phase 2, it's typically initiated when we begin to search for deeper meaning in our lives and start asking ourselves the following 3 questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And what's my unique purpose in life? Now, you'll note that if you've experienced this, where you've started to ask yourself these deeper questions, look back at you in your life a few years ago where you weren't really asking yourself these questions. You might have been more caught up in just trying to survive and pay the bills and look after your basic needs in life, where you're just trying to survive and get by day to day. But as you've started to gain more awareness, more intelligence, and more wisdom through deeper level of experience in life, and as you start to navigate life with a higher level of consciousness, you find that like these 3 questions really start to become the major things that you start asking yourself on a consistent and daily basis. And this is the nudge that we need to then start to get us into phase 2 to start playing the game here on Earth. Now, this may look pretty intimidating to start off with, but what I want to do is now show you a mind map of how all of this ties in together. So let's head over to the mind map and look at the human game experience. So we've covered this. You may have heard of like the higher realms before, but the way I've got this diagram set up, I will show you the full thing so you can grasp it in your mind first, but don't get overwhelmed by this, please, because it is a little bit crazy to look at initially, and I will do my absolute best to simplify it over time, I promise. But this is really the most advanced I've been able to make it for now that encompasses all of the aspects that we're talking about. And by the way, do not at all feel like you have to fully comprehend everything. If one thing stands out for you in this diagram, perfect. Take that. Don't worry about trying to do the mental gymnastics to understand the whole thing right now. So it really looks like this. And at a high level, if you can see this curvature, well, this is a representation of the Earth, right? And you can see that represented here, the Earth. And this really represents the star systems. And at the highest level, this greater star, I'm going to give you a link to this so you can look at it deeper. But the highest star here, this is the great central sun. So think of this as the creator, God, the divine source frequency, and you can see a bit of a graph here of what that looks like. where the great central sun is literally the biggest and most powerful sun in our entire universe. And this holds the infinite intelligence of all that is, and this intelligence and this energy or information streams down to us here on Earth. Anyway, moving on, as we go down, well, when we look at like the Big Bang or anything like that and look at the systems, there's the central sun and everything spans out from that, right? And Earth is a long way away from the great central sun. But as we look at our experience here on Earth, the reason why I've put the higher realms, well, the higher realms really relates to the higher dimensions of consciousness. But we won't get into that conversation just now. So as we come here as a human being and we're born on planet Earth, well, we come in with a unique purpose or guidance system in our life. And then in order to really start to identify our purpose, well, the key to identifying our purpose is to optimize our performance as a human being, or in other words, to raise our level of consciousness. And we do that by mastering ourselves across the areas of mind, body, and spirit. And you can see here that your unique purpose in life will be disclosed to you once you match your purpose in its vibrational frequency. Now, if this concept is foreign, don't worry. With additional things that we're going to be covering in this course and program, these words will start to come to you and you'll start to understand them at a deeper level. But do not worry about trying to grasp it right now if this is the first time you've heard of these things. Moving forward, the information that contains the details of your unique purpose currently resonates at a higher vibrational frequency than what you currently reside in. And this is why you haven't, quote unquote, found your purpose yet. It's because, do you honestly think that when you came here on Earth, it was going to be a click of the fingers and extremely easy to find your purpose? And the reason why it's not that way is because our purpose is divine. Our purpose is bigger than who we currently are. That's why we have to expand into the greatest version of ourself, the highest potential version of ourself, in order to actually achieve the clarity of what our unique purpose is. Because if we do have a unique purpose, and if our purpose is built and meant for us, well, we wouldn't be able to achieve it at our current state of being or our current level of mastery. And that's why I show you here that in order to actually get clarity on what our purpose is, we must first focus on mastering ourselves across our mind, body, and spirit in order to raise up in our level of vibration. And you can analyze this at a deeper level. We must overcome and transmute a lot of these lower level desires to then raise up and rise in our level of vibration, where we're overcoming the victim abuser consciousness and we're stepping into self-empowerment and eventually self-realization, where we're going from a third dimension of reality into integrating ourselves with our higher self and becoming the embodiment of acceptance, understanding, inner wisdom, inner love, and oneness with all. Once we start to reach these levels, that's where our purpose is revealed onto us. So if we are still residing in things like, or emotions of shame, despair, fear, anger, judgment, guilt, pride, well, they're going to be keeping us dense or low in our energetic vibration. And that is what's going to prevent us from finding our purpose or discovering it. So, in order to obtain the clarity you seek, you first must be willing to work on raising your own internal vibrational frequency so that your vibration can begin resonating at the same frequency in which your purpose can be revealed to you. At the frequency of your higher self, essentially. So coming back here, look at where your higher self is. Right here, at the fifth dimension of reality. So in order to integrate and start to unite with our higher self, we must become in tune to our higher self in order to work and live, in cooperation with our higher self or at the fifth dimension of frequency. So now, moving on from here, let's look at this first graph that I've got designed. Notice how I said, see how we can see phase 1 here, phase 2. So just to explain the overall view of this dotted line running right down through the middle, this is a representation of the breaking point / a point of acceptance. In other words, this is the transition point of flux where we go from phase 1 and we finally crack over and step into phase 2. So looking at phase 1, in phase 1 we live our lives from an unconscious state where we follow the beliefs, paradigms, behaviors, and ways of thinking that we were indoctrinated into from a very early age. This is where we're typically obsessed with the external material world. We are facing a lot of limitation in our life. And we're really dominant in like kind of logic thinking, especially as guys, in the mind. Women are obviously like more integrated into the feminine energy, and women naturally understand a lot of this stuff because they can tap into their intuition a lot easier than guys. But as we cross over to the phase 2 way of life, well, instead of obsessing over our external reality, we start to then go within and start to focus on our internal world. In other words, focusing on our mind, body, and spirit, not about material possession and things like that. The other paradigm change is instead of limitation, we start to realize that we are actually infinite beings because we are all here on earth created from Source or God or the one infinite creator. And if we are created from the one infinite creator, then we begin to realize that, well, God or the creator is actually within all of us. It lives within, or he lives, she lives within all of us. That energy is within you. So we start to then look at and start to understand the dynamics of energy a little bit more. We start to investigate things like quantum physics and start to understand how that works instead of just classic physics, which shows us and gives us an understanding of how the material world works. Let's jump into presentation mode here. Next up, so now let's go to birth, right? When we're born, this graph here, the angle of this graph, this shows us that when we're born, this big, wide, expansive graph, like the distance between here and here, shows that we are expansive. We are totally pure. We are really expansive human beings when we are born in the first stages of life. But from this place of birth, you'll notice that this starts closing down. In other words, we start to actually experience more and more limitation in our reality as a part of the way that this game or this earth game is set up. So then, as we're born and we grow up through life, well, we start to have many, many experiences. And all an experience is an opportunity for us to learn. Now, whenever we experience something in our life, we have two paths. We can either integrate the learning lesson and learn from the experience that we have, or we can really deny ourselves of the experience and not learn the lesson and continue to repeat our own cycles that leads us further into limitation. Because when we view this as a game, an experience is merely just a challenge, right? It's a challenge for us to learn and integrate the lesson that we need to learn at that time. And if we learn it, great. But typically, from what I've seen, many people in the first phase of their life, we don't fucking learn our lessons because we're still so far removed. We're not at a higher level of consciousness yet. We actually have to experience more and more limitation. We have to go through more hardship until we wake the fuck up, until we reach a point of catalyst. Now, this point of catalyst, this can essentially be the dark night of the soul, for example, from the hero's journey. It can really be a catalyst in any aspect of our life where, your finances might take the biggest hit in your life, like the banks might be after you. You might go through a really bad breakup, a divorce, or something tragic might happen in your life. Typically, if that happens, that is a catalyst point. That's an opportunity for you to learn from and to take ownership, to get out of the victimhood mentality and to start claiming ownership of the power that you actually have within you. And when we learn from these experiences and start to see the learnings in everything that we experience in our life, no matter how hard it may be, when we start to reclaim our power in those moments, well, as we start to do so, we can actually tip ourselves over into phase 2, which is a phase of expansion. It's a phase of reclaiming our personal power with who we truly are. Now, there's a couple of other things I want to show you here. As we get into like this deep, dense, like fuck, the world's coming down on us. We're experiencing all this hardship. We're burnt the fuck out. Like something's going wrong. It's a breaking point. But as we tip over this point, this is the point of awareness. This is the point where we start to become aware of what the fuck we're actually doing, what's going on. But typically what I've found is when we reach this point of awareness, of consciousness, of understanding what's actually going on, we're starting to wake up to like, fuck, I've been doing this for ages. I've been addicted to this thing for ages. I've been consuming alcohol. I've been watching porn all the time. Like whatever it may be, whatever you keep on fucking up in your life, or maybe you had something bad happen to you, or someone did something to you, and you just don't want to forgive him. You keep on hating him. Well, this is the point where we start to realize like, oh fuck, like, I've got to change my shit. I've got to change my ways. Like this isn't working. I now realize that my problems in my life are because of me and no one else. That's this line. But you'll notice that even after the point of awareness, we can continue to go down into this like deep, darker point of catalyst, right? And this is the complete breaking point. And we can reach this breaking point, and if we learn the lessons and start to then accept our reality and release our attachment to the outcomes in life, well, this is an opportunity where we can now really start to expand ourselves and reclaim our power and our sovereignty. But it's also a point where we can deny ourselves of what's actually truly going on, and we can reach this catalyst point and then go, nah, I'm too scared to like actually acknowledge my light and my power. So therefore, I'm going to play with my darkness for a while longer. And you keep on bouncing back and forth between this awareness point and the catalyst. You'll notice that if you decide to do this, well, you're going to be playing in this little vortex here, this little triangle of complete fucking limitation. Because when you're aware, you can't go back. You can't become unaware. But you can absolutely keep on experiencing breaking points in your life, going back, like getting a little bit more momentum in your life, but then all of a sudden shoot you right back into a catalyst. So I've found like it totally depends on whether or how fast you want to go through this process. Everyone's on their own unique path with their own experiences and their own really life's journey. But I've found as well, like the majority of people never ever reach out beyond this point of catalyst. Most people they basically oscillate back and forth around here for their entire life. And it's up to you whether you want to keep on going and to expand and reclaim the truth and the power of who you really are. Now, you can see here that the expansion is all about expanding back out into our power. So in other words, reclaiming the lost fragments of our true self. And here we get an opportunity. Once we cross this threshold, where we've started to actually embody our own power and started to reclaim our power, that's when we cross the point of no return. This is where we're fucking in and we're committed. But we can also still slide on this spectrum between this line and our infinite light. We can still slide up and down, going back and forth, depending on whether we learn the lesson or not. And there's no right or wrong. We can get up here and we can face off with an experience. When we do, we can either embody and integrate the lesson right away and catapult ourselves to the next experience, the next challenge for us to overcome. And it can also be a harder challenge at times too, because we're being challenged to reclaim more and more of our power. And as we reclaim more and more of our power, we're going to have to face off with greater and greater challenges that matches our new level of power. So if we then decide, oh, nah, this is fucking too much for me, I'm not ready for this, well, we go back, we slide backwards again. And then we typically are going to go ramping back up once we've overcome our shit. And we're going to either experience the same experience or just a different experience with still the same lesson. You can't bypass a lesson. It just doesn't work like that. You will face similar situations in your life through the form of different people, different circumstances. But everything you experience, life is going to mirror back to you the lesson that you need to learn in this moment. And that's why I love this model, because it just shows you like everything is merely an experience. We're either learning from them or we're not. And when we do, we reclaim our power and we expand into the infinite truth of who we are, which is infinite power, abundance, joy, and love. Now, when we actually go through the process of reclaiming our infinite power, with each limitation pattern that we collapse, the more power that we reclaim. So you'll notice over here, it's all about limitation. So for example, let's give you an example of this. Say you've reached a catalyst point. Say you've reached a point in your life where like the money in your bank account is running out and you're kind of fucked, right? You've got a lot of bills and you don't know what to do. So then you go into absolute scarcity mode and start shitting your pants, trying to figure out, how do I make more money? So then you just continue to work harder, but you get dumber while you're doing it. And then no matter what you do, no matter what you throw at it, you continue to face financial scarcity. Well, what is that? That's a limitation. That's a limitation telling you that you're not good enough, you're not abundant, you're not worthy to have cash because you suck. So then you go with your early programming since childhood, and you fall into the trap of being like, well, in order to get more money, I just need to work harder and follow all these bullshit principles that you've been taught growing up because you were born into a life of limitation with teachings and principles around you that actually don't work, that actually propel you deeper into limitation. But what if instead, when you reach this catalyst point, you're like, all right, I'm fucked, got no money, I don't know what to do. What if in then you started to actually really feel into the energy of what it feels like to have no money in your account? Like, what does that make you feel like? Because remember, everything you experience in your external reality is just an illusion. It's all made up. It's a holographic illusion. But when we start to realize that, well, the quality of our life, instead of looking at what's happening in the external world, let's start looking at what's going on within me, in my mind, my body, and my spirit, with my emotions as well. Instead of obsessing over how many numbers are in my bank account and letting that determine how valuable and worthy I am, let's start to go inward and start to focus on my internal energetic state. Instead of obsessing logically over how the fuck I'm going to solve this problem, in the meantime, let's start tuning into your heart. Let's start tuning into the deeper aspect of yourself and start to process through the emotions that are coming up for you. Because as we do that, we now start to reclaim our power, because we're not allowing our external reality dictate our internal state of being or our feeling within. Instead, we're starting to master our internal state of being, which then will create and reflect back to us in our external world. Because whatever we're vibrating within, we will then create an experience in our reality that matches that vibration. And I'll get further into that in a moment. So then, here you go. You know you have mastered a soul lesson when the circumstance has not changed, but the way you respond has. This is true energy self-mastery. And we're going to get further into that in a moment. Now, other aspects here. I'll let you read that if you'd like. I'm not going to explain that one right now, just to save a little bit of time in this video. And you can also read that one and pause the video if you'd like to read into that too. And once again, I'm giving you a link to this mind map for you to analyze at a greater depth. Now, remember how I said that this line down the middle is the tipping point between phase 1 and phase 2 over here. Well, this runs down the entire mind map here. So keep that in mind. So as we transition into this point of catalyst, we have two choices in life. Do we continue playing the human game of limitation and carry that karma over into our next life? Yes or no? Or do we start to question the design of the human game and commit to reclaiming our personal power with every opportunity that we get? So let's look into our classic design in the first phase of life, okay? Well, you can see this, it's a very simple graph, but it can take a little bit to understand starting out. So in the beginning of life, what happens is when we're born, we are here, right? But because we're born and we have no idea what the fuck we're doing, we allow our reality to be created for us, essentially. So what happens here is in phase 1, our perception of reality is built and reinforced by two things. Number 1, which I'm not going into right now, but number 1 is actually the unresolved karmic energy that we've carried with us from past lives. Number 2 are the beliefs, stories, teachings, and perceptions that we were indoctrinated into by the people that we were exposed to throughout our childhood and teenage years. This builds our entire life operating system and filter for which we now receive, perceive, and process all information. The way we filter and process information will create a unique way in which we perceive new information, the meaning we attach to life experiences, and the way in which we respond to challenges, which will ultimately determine our entire outlook on life itself. Once we deeply understand this, we realize that it doesn't matter where we currently are or what has happened to us in our past. All that matters is how we choose to respond and conduct ourselves from this point forward. If we fail to take responsibility for consciously choosing the thoughts we want to think, the feelings we want to feel, and the actions we want to take, we are ultimately denying ourselves of our own power and will continue to live experience a life of limitation and struggle. So in other words, what this is saying is that in the first phase of life, we've got ourselves here, but when we're growing up, our reality, our perception and view of reality is actually created and reinforced by our experiences and our adopted beliefs that have been indoctrinated into us from those around us. So let's look at our experiences. In phase 1, our perception of and meaning we attach to our experiences will be dictated by our own unique operating system that has been developed by our unresolved karmic energy and our early life indoctrination. As we continue to experience more of life, our adopted beliefs only continue to be reinforced through our experiences, because our perception of reality and our experiences are created by our limiting beliefs and attachments. And the more our experiences validate our deeply held beliefs, the more we will actually have experiences that further validate our beliefs and perceived limitations. So what this is essentially saying is that because our beliefs and our perceptions of the world create our reality, well, because when we come into reality when we're born, we don't actually know what the fuck reality is, right? And we don't know what meaning to attach to our experiences. But what happens is, in the early stages, our beliefs actually, first and foremost, they determine our reality. They determine our perception of our identity and who we are, which then determines our perception of our reality. But the reason why I've got them in order here is because once our beliefs are formed, right, in the world, well, what actually happens then is this creates like a box around us. And the box, the most outer portion of that is our environment and our reality in which we live. Then, in life, we go and have experiences, and our experiences are all conducted within this perceived reality. Now, when we perceive a reality to be a certain way, and we go ahead and experience certain things in our environment, well, that will then reinforce. It's like a reinforcement system, all going back down. It's going down in towards who we are and our identity, right? So our reality will reinforce our experiences. Our experiences will reinforce our adopted beliefs. And our adopted beliefs will continue to reinforce our identity of who we think we are, which will then ultimately create our unique energetic vibration in the world. So let's go into beliefs now. Our beliefs are essentially constructed by school systems, our social circles, our family beliefs, societal norms, and earth systems, okay? And this creates our perception of our lived experience, because if you grow up, say, in a family where you have a certain belief system and you go and scrape your knee on the pavement, if you have a family that's like, oh, it's all right, mate, you just scraped your knee and all is good, you'll be fine, you're probably not going to give a fuck. Yeah, you're going to be a bit sore, but you're going to be like, oh, I'm more powerful than this experience. I'll be fine. But if you've grown up in a family of worrywarts where you scrape your knee and now all of a sudden your mum is flipping her shit and freaking out and making you anxious, well, you're going to carry that energy into every experience that you face in your life. So then everything that you face, you're going to start perceiving the world with like a view and a lens of anxiety and stress no matter what happens, because you're always going to believe like, oh shit, I'm scared of what's going to happen out there in my reality. What am I going to do now? That is a massive limitation, right? So can you see the contrast in just like a very simple example, the type of, the way in which like different people, depending on their background and their experiences in life, are going to perceive the same experience. It's not anyone's fault. It's merely a byproduct of deep-seated programming. So then our limiting beliefs. So for example, we scrape our knee and we believe like, oh, we are totally fucked if we, if we scrape our knee. Well, that limiting belief and paradigm will be reinforced and strengthened by our lived experience, because our experiences are going to be are essentially created by our own subconscious and like deeply held programming that we have adopted throughout life. And then say we do go out and so say we've adopted the belief that scraping your knee is basically like death. Well, the next time you go out and scrape your knee, you're going to be shitting your fucking pants, aren't you? Because you're naturally already scared of that. But if you're someone who doesn't care and you're like, oh, it's fine, like that's not going to bother you. It's barely going to disrupt your beat in your step when you're walking down the street. So then what now happens is, as we then live more of these experiences, especially in our collective society, we then begin to accept the status quo. We begin to accept things the way that we've been taught for them to be. And the more of life we experience, the more rigid and attached we become to our beliefs. And our strongly formed beliefs offer us like a deep sense of security, safety, stability, certainty, and acceptance from the tribe. Because while a lot of us are very, a lot of us require stability and safety and security from our physical bodies, like one that's way more intense than that is actually like we all crave a deep sense of security and stability with our own fucking mind. And the more expansive, like the more we challenge our mind, you just look at it, you watch. Look how crazy people get when you challenge a belief system or a paradigm that they've deeply held within their system for so fucking long. For example, let's get controversial. Just simply, for now, I don't want to make this about what's going on in the world, but just to really drum this home. What if you went to someone who strongly believes in vaccines and you said, I'm not getting a vaccine? Or the other way around, whatever. Well, look at how quick that person is going to flip on you and how deeply they're going to get straight into survival mode and basically start chewing you out. Well, the reason is because of this here. It's all because our deepest held beliefs or our deepest needs are structured in a hierarchical form where we all crave survival first and foremost, then safety, then a sense of belonging, importance, and then self-actualization. So I'll allow you to study that a little bit more in depth. But let's first look at our need for survival. The more focused we are on meeting basic needs of survival and safety, the more limited and helpless we feel. The more helpless we feel, the less likely we are to ask and ponder the bigger questions in life, like things like who am I, why am I here, and what's my purpose? Because these are bigger, more expansive questions. Most people aren't going to be thinking about this shit if little Timmy over here is just worried about getting some food in his belly so he's not going to go hungry for the rest of the night. And it's no wonder that the majority of our civilization has yet to question the validity of the current accepted societal norms, because they don't really back their own ability to actually question things, right? And that's okay. Everyone's on their own path. But this then essentially plugs us into continuing to run on our hamster wheel, a wheel of limitation in our life. And the pathway to mastery all begins with the questioning of everything. We must question everything, including ourselves, if we really want to expand and enhance our performance and master ourselves in life. Because this allows us to begin developing our understanding of how the human game or the human experience actually works. Without understanding the big picture, it's impossible for us to become a master player. So, next up. The next one I wanted to reference to you is the sense of belonging. And this is really to do with like how we adopt and hold rigid belief systems in our society. So throughout history, humans have always depended on one another for survival. Fitting in and being integrated within a tribe has always offered greater odds of survival in the long term. Surviving as an outcast without the protection of the tribe has always been a near possible feat. So in other words, we always needed our tribe to survive. In our current times, human beings still crave a deep sense of belonging for both our survival and happiness. Being accepted makes us feel validated, worthy, and valuable. Now, considering that we commonly develop similar beliefs to those within our tribe, it poses a great risk to begin questioning the foundation of the commonly held beliefs within our tribe. Because remember, we all fucking crave security and safety. And since our beliefs bring us security and safety, comfort and certainty, when someone's entire belief system is challenged, feelings of rage, anger, and fear and uncertainty are very likely to emerge. So, by evoking these feelings in other people within our own tribe, we run the risk of being outcast from our tribe completely, due to the perceived threat that we become when we challenge and question the entire foundation of someone else's reality. This is why people continue to believe things that don't make sense. So now let's go back up here. We've really covered beliefs in quite in depth. Now, our identity is really just about the identity that we hold in regards to who we think we are and why we're here. And this perception will then determine our energetic vibration. So this model here is showing you that in the first phase of life, everything is now creating our internal state, our state of vibration. And our state of vibration can be further analyzed by looking at this. All of these above influences will determine our internal energetic vibrational frequency. And our current energetic vibration will directly determine our current level of consciousness. And the current level of consciousness in which we reside offers us a direct reflection of our current level of human mastery. This is why mastering our emotions, doing the internal work, is the key to mastering our life and achieving anything we want. And thus why spiritual mastery is the fundamental key in reclaiming our infinite personal power and mastering absolutely anything in our lives. Now, I'll allow you to go and dig deeper into the map of consciousness and things like this, but you can notice here, when we are at the lower level emotions, things like shame, despair, fear, anger, pride, all of these, when we're yet to resolve these, they're going to continue to hold us back and hold us down in a lower state of being. So what we're really all after, right, is we're all chasing emotions. Well, what emotions are we chasing? We're all chasing. We all crave to be accepted, to be understood, to have a deep sense of inner wisdom, to feel love within us and around us. We all want these things, but we all can't get there because we're so stuck and plagued by these unprocessed emotions that continue to hold us back in these energetic frequencies. And when we continue to vibrate and oscillate at these energetic frequencies, because our internal state creates our external reality, we get more of the same. We experience life through this perception, through this lens. So someone vibrating down here at a level of anger, they can experience the same thing that someone experiences at a level of love, and this person is just going to see things through the lens of anger, and this person is going to see things through acceptance and love and be totally chill with the situation. It's all about our internal state. And you can see here how the chakras aligned with also our hierarchy of needs and the levels of consciousness on this map over here. And if you want to look at a few additional quotes, you can check this out. One from Tesla, like, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. Nothing rests, everything moves. Everything vibrates. At the most fundamental level, the universe and everything which comprises it is pure vibratory energy, manifesting itself in different ways. The universe has no solidity as such. Matter is merely energy in a state of vibration. Sorry, left brain dominant autist. We live in a fluid reality. You can then look at like the additional ones here as well. But this then ties into the ascension process of our consciousness. You can see here how going from, and by the way, this inner point is basically 4D reality, the fourth dimension of reality, and over here is the fifth dimension. So 3D is really all about, like, the lower level is all about ego, service to self, duality, like us versus them, polarization. Just look at the fucking media these days. Like, the reason why they do that is to keep people down in these emotions, because the more that when we basically obsess over and view content or relate to people at this level, we get more of that. It's reflected back to us in our reality. So that's how the media really does some mass mind control on people. But not the conversation for today. This is like the guise of control, rules, status, materialism, like work harder, linear thinking, fear and lower emotions, cause and effect, because this is a funny concept that we like to think that we know cause and effect at this level, but unless we're operating at a higher level of consciousness, where we understand the game at a higher level, trying to like assume cause and effect at a lower level of consciousness is basically fucking pointless. This is linear thinking, victimhood mentality. Going into 4D, this is like expanding our level of consciousness. We're challenging our old belief systems. We're still in comparison, so we're still like in a dualistic type reality. This is where we start to really seek the answers, right? Where we're starting to seek the answers within. We're understanding global structures. We are becoming aware of things like quantum physics and understanding how things are all connected. We're becoming more compassionate. You know, we're a little bit lighter with ourselves. We're not really gung-ho on burning ourselves out as much. We're aligning with our unique purpose in life, becoming a little bit more flexible, and we're becoming more connected with others around us too. 5D is all about being at one with yourself and the universe, unity consciousness, aligning with the divine. We're now tapping into it, the power of our heart, becoming heart-centered and leading with love and service to others. We're becoming purpose-based and mission-based. We're feeling connected to everyone. We are in a higher energetic frequency. We're being very authentic. We are absolutely committed to the truth at all costs. We're able to tap into like flow states. We're able to tap into feelings of abundance. This is where we can start to receive downloads and start to get access to information at higher levels. This is unconditional sharing. So it's like you're not trying to hide anything or be better than anyone else. It's like, hey, you're just open to sharing everything that you have, really. This is where that you start to view yourself as a co-creator, and everything starts to essentially become much more effortless in life. Now, as we make this transition over to phase 2 living, growing up, most of us adopt the belief that we are the byproduct of what happens to us in the external environment. Now, as we start to transition across, we realize that our internal state actually creates our external reality. And this is the key paradigm shift that will enable us to begin taking responsibility for our lives and everything that we are creating in every now moment. So going from external to internal. So when we do this, if we look at this graph here, notice how in phase 1, everything like our reality, our perception of reality, experiences, adopted beliefs, and our identity, that's all creating who we think we are and what our current energetic vibrational state is. In other words, what emotions we're feeling on a daily basis. But as we transition across, notice how everything is inverted in phase 2. It's now we're focused on our own internal mastery of our energy and processing through our emotions and allowing that to determine who we are, allowing that to form our beliefs, allowing that to form our experiences, and allowing that to form our perception of reality. So in other words, our internal state is creating our external world, whereas in phase 1, our external world is creating our internal reality. So then, the 3 key questions, you know how I mentioned earlier in the slide that the transition point, as we go over here, the transition and the key pillar is really where we start asking the 3 core questions. The 3 questions of who am I, why am I here, and what's my purpose? So when we look into here, you'll notice that the model is inverted, and in stage 2, we become aware that our internal state creates our reality. I already focused on that, but in this phase, we focus on transmuting all lower vibrational emotions into feelings of infinite power, abundance, appreciation, and unconditional love. So let's zoom out to just get a bit of a bigger picture now, because we've covered a fucking lot. So thanks for staying with me. What I'm going to do is now just reference a couple of other things so you know how to navigate this map moving forward. And then I'm going to leave that map with you. And then we're actually going to get into the strategy of what strategy can we actually apply to enable us and accelerate this process moving forward. So just a couple of points of reference. you'll notice here that expansion is really the process of inner alchemy and purifying our energy. So follow this path, and you'll notice that you come down to the 7 stages of alchemy, which you should have already gone through in week 1 of Alchemy of Life Design. What I've done is I've broken them out into the actual phases of alchemy, so you can use this as a more visual representation, so you can really skip around and see things from a visual, interconnected standpoint as well. Now, what we're going to be doing in the next phase of this video, you can see here, expansion is all about the process of reclaiming our infinite power, and with each limitation that we experience, when we collapse the limitations in our field, the more power we reclaim. And the energy and level of consciousness continues to increase in direct proportion to the amount of personal power that we reclaim in our lives. So this is then linked to what I call the quantum strategy, and this is a strategy I'm going to share with you next in the keynote slides, and I also have a link for a printout for you in the document or the resource section below this video. So I just wanted to include that here and a breakdown of that as a reference for you. And lastly, you'll notice how we covered the core components of performance, which is our design, which is all about this design here and looking at who designed us. Then the other aspects are your mind, body, spirit. So we've covered the mind, right? The mind is really this entire paradigm of reality. Then the body and the spirit, they're quite interconnected. Spirit is really about your energy and your consciousness, and your body is all about understanding your internal energetic systems, your physiology, and your chakra system. So I've included that here for you that you can look into at a deeper level, like the more spiritual understanding of how your body actually works. And then you can see your entire chakra system that is interconnected, and you can investigate that further as well if you'd like. So let's transition back, take a fucking breath. Oh, lastly, there's a reference for how holograms are created. So let's take a fucking breath. Let's get back into the keynote. And now what I'm going to be doing is sharing the quantum strategy, which I already referenced and mentioned, which is really a strategy that I implement for myself. And it's the most powerful thing that I've ever come across in being able to reclaim my personal power, because I was so fucking sick of experiencing things in my life where I would experience hardships. I'd experience shit in my life and reality all the time that would create such like dense emotions of anxiety, stress, overwhelm. Fear is a major one. Guilt even in my body. And whenever I was feeling those things, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything, let alone create anything in business and things like that. So what I found and what I really started to deploy over time was this quantum strategy that I'm about to explain to you now. But from a general overview, to explain it, really what it is the core consensus is that whenever you experience something in your life, and whenever you can sense you buying into like a limitation in your reality, or whenever you experience a hardship or a struggle or experience fear coming up within your system, then I apply this strategy. And what that looks like is essentially fucking off, like getting out of whatever you're currently doing and really going within yourself. You can do it in a deep state of meditation. You can even do it when you're out and about at a restaurant. Like when you get good at it, you can just start to work with your system and do it whenever you want. But what I do is I then go into my body and I start to process and become aware of my emotions. And this is really the key thing that very few people have really talked about at all in the high performance space, or even the entrepreneur space. Like everyone's obsessed about optimizing everything else in their external environment, trying to optimize their mind and intelligence and even like their physical body, right? But no one's talking about the actual deeper element of, well, your emotions drive everything. And if you're not sure of that, well, just ask yourself, when in the next decision that you make in your reality, ask yourself why you made that decision. And you'll probably give yourself some bullshit logical reason initially, right? Like you'll tell yourself that, oh, you want to be more successful and yada, yada, yada. But when you follow the path, when you ask yourself why, you'll always come back to, well, you're actually chasing a feeling. You're either avoiding a feeling or trying to chase a new feeling. And that's why we make decisions. So understanding that and understanding the map that I just showed you before of understanding our connection with really the importance of mastering our internal state and our energetic vibration to create the external reality in which we want. Well, in order to do that, in order to enhance our energetic vibration, because energy is, emotions are energy in motion, we've got to process through the energies that are flowing through our body. In other words, we've got to process through the emotions in our body. And as a guy and men in this world, men have been taught to suppress emotions at the deepest level and never analyze them or go into them and look at them at a deeper level. But what I'm about to share with you is exactly that. And it took me a long time to discover. I just came upon it naturally. I was kind of led here. I don't know how. It just really evolved. And I got better at it the more I did it and the more I meditated. And I started to really see massive change in my life. So I'm going to share it with you today. I'm not saying that this is gospel. You have your own free will to decide whether you want to apply this or not. But I'm telling you, experiment with it and see where it goes from there. So let's dive back into the keynote. And now I'll show you the actual kind of like the logical understanding of the steps to follow here. So the quantum strategy number one, first and foremost, is to express appreciation and gratitude in your life for every experience. So the overview of this is that what I like to do is really express appreciation and gratitude first and foremost for myself, for how amazing I had to be to make this illusion that I'm living in this holographic reality, appear real. The next thing is to express appreciation for my creations in the world, be it like someone that I've manifested or created in my reality, a place, a thing, and I just express appreciation for how amazingly real it feels, how perfect that they are in supporting me and playing this human game, and also the specific benefits that I receive from every creation or every experience. Then I also really just express massive appreciation for the creative process that goes into making like everything possible in our actual reality. And I just wanted to note that, you know, a lot of us are taught to express appreciation and gratitude and have affirmations to do so, right? But I wanted you to know it doesn't matter about the words. It's more about tapping into the feeling of feeling grateful, feeling appreciative, feeling grateful for everything in every now moment. And what I would encourage you to do, if this is new to you, well, whenever you just become aware of it, merely just express appreciation whenever you think of it in that moment for one thing. For example, right now, I might express gratitude and appreciation for just my breath, just being able to breathe, and for that to give me the life force that I have available to me. And while I'm doing that, I might also express appreciation for something in my external reality as well, for other people. So I always match it with myself and the people around me, or the world around me, or a creation around me. And that way I'm expressing appreciation for both myself and everything else outside of me simultaneously. And note that most people will kind of try to get you to do this and write your gratitude down, and that's the first step. But the second step is to go within and actually feel it, because the feeling is what actually changes your reality, not necessarily just words on paper. Now, the next strategy is actually to practice what I call the full quantum strategy. I don't really have a science or a words for this, but I practice the full quantum strategy in depth. Now, the way that this looks is the overview is when you experience discomfort, like I said, fear or any lower level emotion of any kind, it can also be financial, or catch yourself believing in a limitation. In other words, anything that's not infinite. I proceed with this specific process. So an example experience of believing in a limitation or feeling lack or discomfort of any time or of any type might be like when you start asking yourself, oh, can I afford that? Should I buy that? Do I really need that now? What would my spouse think if I bought or did that? And the reason why I've included those examples is because typically money is typically a major one for a lot of people. And whenever we're experiencing that, like our worries about money typically dictate most people's behavior in life. It dictates like what we do for work. It dictates the path we follow. It dictates our choices, our buying behaviors, like all of it. So that's why I've included monetary examples, but it doesn't stop there. It can apply and extend into anything you experience. It can apply into like a fight you had with a spouse, something that happened to you, a family member, something that happens in business, anything. Any discomfort you feel, you can apply this process. So step number 1 is to dive right into the middle of it. In other words, like just get into the energy of what you're currently feeling and allow yourself to feel it. So dive in and feel it fully. Do not suppress, don't run away, or don't distract yourself with just trying to avoid the feeling itself. Step 2 is to then like feel it fully, like get in and actually embody that feeling fully. And that allows you to reach a deep place of acceptance where you're not attached to it. There's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. You're just accepting it for what is, and you're accepting it. You're accepting the energy that's currently flowing through you. So when you feel it fully, make sure like just don't worry about thinking. There's no logic, no intellect, no judgment, and no labeling associated with this. And don't even worry, like if you start asking yourself, am I doing this right? Like just stop. That's thinking and that's logic. The point is to just feel and allow yourself to like amplify the level of discomfort that you're feeling. You know, if you're feeling anxiety, just step into it, step into the storm, because you have to go through the storm. You can't avoid the storm. Next step is to tell the truth about it. So this is where, when the feeling reaches like its peak intensity, start to address the truth about what's actually going on and start to affirm who you really are, how powerful you really are, and really acknowledge that you created this yourself, you manifested this yourself, and then start to address the key points that it's not actually real, it's just a creation of your consciousness, which it is. And you must really feel the truthfulness and the power of the words that you use to describe it. And some example statements that I use on a consistent basis whenever I'm trying to acknowledge and tell the truth about what I'm experiencing in my reality, I return to basically stating that I am the power and presence of the one infinite creator. I am the power of infinite intelligence. I am the power of pure consciousness. I am the ultimate power in the universe. I am the power and presence of the one infinite creator, creating this experience. It's not real, it's completely made up, it's a creation of my consciousness. Now what that allows, and this isn't some ego trip, right? Like I'm not claiming that I am bigger and better than anyone. I'm just simply understanding the truth that I am a part of the whole. We are all one. We are all a part of the creator within, right? So I'm just actually acknowledging the truth of how our reality works. And when you acknowledge the truth, you start to collapse the limitations that you've designed to experience to feel that way, and you're now reclaiming your power from those perceived limitations in your reality. Step number 4 is to reclaim your power from that experience. So a power statement might be something like, I reclaim my power from this creation now, and then you want to amplify your energy. So as I reclaim that power, I feel it coming back to me. I feel it surging through me. And a note here is to ensure that you feel it flowing back to you and feel it surging through you. Because one thing is, when you're starting in this process, it can be quite intimidating, where you might be like telling yourself these words and you might be trying to figure out how to do it. But the point is to start saying the words to then trigger the feeling within you. And a great way to align yourself to start feeling the power flowing through you is to start working in tune with your breath and in flow with your breath. Start to breathe a little bit more aggressively. And if you've ever done something like Wim Hof, that's an example of aggressive breathing. You don't want to do that. You more want to like relax and do deep breathing. But as you breathe, like feel yourself getting more abundant, more powerful, more energized by the breath and the life force that you're allowing to flow through you, and start to really try to open your heart up, if that makes sense. And it's something that has to be felt, so I'm aware of that, but hopefully that has planted a seed that you can start to try or implement in a deeper meditative state when you're applying this specific process. Then the step 5 is to basically amplify that process that I just spoke about, where you're feeling the infinite energy of all that is. And this is going to allow you to open up to more and more of who you really are, where you're feeling the infinite energy flowing through you. And this step is all about cultivating the feeling of actually being infinitely powerful, infinitely wise, and infinitely abundant. And you can start and trigger this process by asking the following. Because at times, if you don't truly believe this yet, then I would use these statements to start to trick your mind into just becoming open to what it would feel like. So you can ask yourself stuff like, what would it feel like if I had infinite power, wisdom, and abundance? What would it feel like if I could just snap my fingers and anything I wanted instantly manifested? What would it feel like to be in absolute joyfulness, peace all the time? And to cultivate and expand these feelings, you can repeat the following phrases over and over and really feel the truth and the power of them. So you can then go into what I was referring to before with these power statements and saying, I am the power and presence of God creating everything I experience, absolutely everything. There is no power out there, not in anyone, not in anything. In other words, it's within all of us, right? It's in us. I am infinite abundance right here, right now. It is my natural state of being. I have the infinite power to create anything I want. I have infinite knowledge and wisdom. I am infinite feelings of joyfulness and peace. I am infinite feelings of unconditional love and appreciation for all my creations. I am the infinite supply of money to express appreciation with right here, right now. And this is really just addressing the truth. And when you look more into this, these are all true statements. There's nothing false or gimmicky about them. Know that with full confidence that your ability to feel the infinite energy will actually expand over time. It will start small, and just accept that, and don't judge yourself for it. It's totally fine. But the more you try and the more that you do it, you will get better at it. And I can tell you that from experience. Now, the goal is to feel the infinite energy on command. In the beginning, everything may sound like empty words, and that's totally okay. You can say them anyway, and just feel them as you can at your current capacity to do so. And over time, it will all become more real to you. Now, the full affirmation and feeling combined might look something like this, okay? You might say something like, as I feel the surge of energy, I feel myself expanding more and more into who I really am. I feel myself expressing more and more of who I really am in my hologram, in my human experience. I am the presence and power of God. I am infinite abundance, right here, right now. And while you're immersed in this infinite energy, in consciousness, and you replay the experience that triggered the original discomfort, while you're immersed in the infinite energy in consciousness, what you can then do is actually replay the experience that triggered the original discomfort in your mind. And if you still feel any discomfort as you experience the mental image or a scene of that experience again, what you can start to do is merge the discomfort energy, the dense energy that you feel come up, into the infinite expansive energy that you're now beginning to feel. And the infinite energy of abundance, power, and love will actually dissolve and, in other words, transmute the lower level dense energies or emotions that you're currently feeling. And you can replay this process or replay the image in your mind as many times as you'd like, as long as you're continuing to work through dissolving that lower level dense energy within your system. And this is true alchemy, guys. This is true alchemy. Now, when you express the appreciation, step 6 is expressing the appreciation for yourself and the creation. So here, you take a look at the movie scene or the image, the reality that you created to stimulate the feelings of discomfort. And you appreciate how magnificent that creation was, how amazing you had to be to create it, and how amazing it is that you could actually believe it was real when it was actually just an illusion. Generate a feeling of wow. And therefore, at the end of applying this strategy and this process within the strategy, you're going to be in an extremely joyous and expanded state, because the feelings of joy, appreciation, and gratitude are very aligned to love, which are of the highest energetic frequencies that we can actually experience. And in this stage of development, you'll be applying the process really like side by side with your higher self, and we can talk more about this concept as well. And I'm more than happy to do that. Who is actually like, your higher self is really the one leading you and guiding you to help you in reclaiming your power in phase 2 of the process, or in phase 2 of life. And by applying this process over time, you drain the power from all limitations in your life and reclaim it as yours. And you also will be able to dissolve like all of the limiting beliefs, judgments, and consequences stored in those limitations. Now, the summary is basically, you can read over this summary. It's essentially a recap that I am creating this. It's not real. It's completely made up. It's a creation of my consciousness. I reclaim my power from this creation now. As I reclaim the power, I feel it coming back to me. I feel it surging through me. As I feel the surge, I feel myself expanding more and more and expressing more and more of who I am in my human experience. I am infinite abundance. And notice I've put like little cues here to just remind you to really actually feel everything that you're saying. And last note is to fully appreciate how amazing you had to be to create this, and to convince yourself it was real, how amazing the creation was, and how beautifully it served you at your former stage of development. Now, that is basically the nuts and bolts of it all. Now, the strategy, Quantum Strategy 3, is basically just a mini version of that. So instead of, you know how in this main strategy, when you felt discomfort, you'd apply that whole process that we just went through. But the mini strategy is when you don't necessarily feel discomfort, but you might see you buying into like a limiting belief, paradigm, perception in your reality. Well, this is when you can start to actually apply the same overview process, but in a more simplified format. You can just address the following recap that we just went over in a more, I guess, like short-formed manner, where you don't have to go through the entire thing, because when you're feeling discomfort, you typically have to go into like deep states of meditation to really process through a lot of that energy. But if you just see limitations, well, this is a great way to actually break limiting beliefs and paradigms that you've bought into within your reality throughout your life. And then 4 is empowering vocabulary and self-talk. So our words hold great weight. You know, the origin of spelling is actually a derivative of spells, like casting spells. Words hold great weight. So another strategy that we can apply to help us reclaim our personal power is to reframe the way in which we speak about things. So in the human game, we have numerous ideas, concepts, and words that are used to reinforce the illusion of limitation. And this is really especially applied into financial limitation. And I'm once again using this as an example because everyone can relate to it. To complement the other strategies, you can ensure to modify language and self-talk to support your own expansion into infinite abundance. And our intention is to transform all limiting beliefs, ideas, concepts, and words into an expansive and empowering replacement, along with the feeling experienced with each truth statement. So some examples might be like, well, instead of viewing, oh man, like this is going to cost me that much, well, just view a cost as like a request for appreciation. Because if we instead view everything that we can purchase in our reality not as a cost, but something that we can actually appreciate in the exchange of, well, we're now really starting to align ourselves with a higher energetic frequency. Instead of seeing the cost as something that's bad and negative, we're seeing it as an opportunity to be really appreciative of what we can actually purchase and what we can buy and what we can trade on an energetic exchange basis. The bill, instead of viewing it like, oh, fuck the bill, like how much is this going to cost? Request for appreciation. I appreciate everything that I was able to eat on this list and on this bill tonight. Expense, another expression of appreciation. Overhead, fixed monthly expressions of appreciation. Price, the requested expression of appreciation. How much? Instead of how much, what is the requested appreciation for this creation? Payment, expression of appreciation. So you can see how this might seem a little bit silly, but when at least you reframe it in your own mind, you're starting to rewrite the way that you emotionally and energetically respond to all of these words that we've been programmed to view as like, oh, fuck, like draining, right? If we can instead flip the script and invert the language in which we use, just watch what's going to happen in your reality. Now, that's basically it for today, guys. It was a fucking big one, so thanks for hanging in there. I would love to hear your feedback on it, because this is absolutely one that I want to refine over time, because it is honestly probably the most important video that you will ever receive from me, but I do understand the complexity of it, and will also like transparently admit the difficulty in getting it simplified. So I'm open for feedback. If you have any fucking questions whatsoever about any aspects of this module within this video, please like comment or reach out, and I'll be more than happy to engage in a deeper discussion with you, because this is essentially the key video that I would love to perfect over time and get right to really help you understand it at a deeper level, while also understanding that you will receive exactly what you're meant to receive in this video too. So moving on now, just to kind of reinforce and allow your mind to think about the bigger picture and to see things from a more chilled perspective as you're navigating the next couple of weeks, I do recommend a few movies for you guys to watch. So the movies I'd recommend watching that also relate to what we're talking about here are: number 1, The Matrix; 2, Star Trek, The Next Generation; 3, The Truman Show; Inception; Avatar, and that's it. But those movies will give you a deep understanding of like what they do is basically open our mind up to question how our reality works. And when you start to look at the parallels and the similarities with, some truth in all of these movies. I'm not saying that every movie is completely truthful, but there is truth in most fiction movies. So I will say that. When you go through them, you can just reflect on what has been said or what's been covered in this video. I invite you to rewatch this video maybe in another month or 2 months' time once you've allowed it to digest. It is a lot. So once again, if you're mentally fucking fried right now, okay, I get it. Like, I don't blame you, to be honest. But yeah, just sit on it and allow it to cultivate. And as we move forward into the next modules, they will be taking a much more practical form. So they won't be as dense as this one. It'll be more action-oriented. But I just wanted to suggest these movies for you to check out over the coming weeks to really just cement in and help you expand your horizons in the way that you view reality, because it is all about self-empowerment. So the action items for today, obviously, just make sure you watch this video in full. Review and look over the human game mental model mind map that I'm going to give you a link to in the resource section of this video. Access a copy of the quantum strategy in the resource section below. I also suggest printing it out and applying it into your daily life, because it does take a bit of processing to get used to it, to understand it, and then to also apply it in your life. And if you have any questions about it too, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help there. Check out the recommended movies in your spare time. And there's just a summary of what we covered today. Alrighty, I will see you in the next video. Cheers.